Catherine, please.
Hey, where do you want? Right over
Take
here?
the seat.
All right.
The assigned seat. Okay, so Wikipedia, which you oversee, and although it sort of oversees itself, that's
Yeah,
kind of the cool
not-
thing about it.
Yeah.
It poses a tremendous contrast to so much of what else we've been discussing here over these last couple days. And, you know, one of the things that I guess I have it as my first question. We could talk about so many things, but, you know, you're in 260 languages. Is that
300.
Jesus, I can't even keep
It
up.
changes every day. I know it's.
But you know, and you are the 5th most trafficked website in the world.
Oh, yeah.
You only have a $110 million budget, which sounds like a lot of money, but it certainly isn't compared to the 4 websites that come ahead of you, or probably the 5 that are behind you either.
That's probably right.
How do you do so much with so little?
Because we do it together. We do it with a volunteer community. We do it with all of you. We have 8 million donors all over the planet. We have the billion or so people who come to our sites every single month, 250,000 editors, tens of millions of editors over the 20 years we've done it. It's a collective project that I think humanity builds together, and that's how it's possible.
You know, we were talking about humanity back in the green room. I mean, say some of the stuff you were saying before. I mean, if we're going to tackle these, one of the things you told me yesterday was that you and your team decided you weren't going to speak anywhere without mentioning climate.
That's right.
And you recently had a Wikipedia kind of global convention, which I think was, where was it? Northern Europe somewhere.
This last year was in Stockholm, Sweden.
In Stockholm, and the SDGs was the theme.
That's right.
Right? So you guys, almost by genetic, somehow, code are on the issues that matter. But what are you learning from that focus about what we could do or should do at the macro level about our challenges?
Yeah, I think we care very much first about the issue of climate change because we feel as though the reason we exist in the first place is not to be a website. The reason we exist is to ensure that everybody can have access to knowledge all over the world, no matter where you are. We view knowledge as the shared legacy of our humanity. It's that thing about all of us that makes us human, that curiosity, that need for learning, the way that every society values knowledge. I think Wikipedia existing in 300 languages is a testament to that shared commitment, no matter what culture we come from, where we live, and the like. And so we feel very much like, as part of that, all the issues of the SDGs are in Wikipedia, and Wikipedia exists in all the issues of the SDGs. So what we can at least think about doing is, how do we ensure that we are part of the conversation in a way that gives people access to the critical information that they need to make better decisions? So one of the things we think a lot about in terms of our work is, you know, we don't think we represent truth. We think we represent instead a process and a model for building trust. We think we represent a process and a model for critical discourse. And we think that that's something that's incredibly important in this day and age, because what we really need in order to have solutions to some of these shared challenges is the ability to see each other as equals, the ability to recognize the humanity in one another, the ability to build trust in each other and in the institutions that we choose to represent us, and to have a common basis of understanding in order to be able to have meaningful conversations about how we address the challenges that we have. If we're talking at each other with different facts without having established a baseline for where we're coming from, we're never going to be able to achieve anything. Now, we don't think an encyclopedia on the internet is going to save the world, but we do think that we have demonstrated that humanity can build really tremendous things despite all the differences that we have. And so there is sort of some hope out there.
It is a proof of, it's a case that shows that something great can be done. I mean, you've obviously done, you and Jimmy and all the people that have devoted so much time to it for decades have proven that something meaningful can be made out of this digital morass that otherwise we seem to not be making such good stuff out of.
Not just meaningful, but beloved. I mean,
beloved, yeah.
Everywhere I go, I talk to school children, I talk to retirees. People love Wikipedia because it's always there when they need it. They trust it. It answers their questions. It's an incredibly intimate experience of being able to ask it anything you want. It doesn't ask you for very much. $3 at the end of the year.
Is there?
Did you donate? Has everyone donated? It's that time of year.
I donate. I actually
Thank you.
will say
For the cost of a cup of coffee.
I actually, I use it so, I must use Wikipedia at least once a day on average, at least.
Well, we serve 17 billion pages of information every single month. 60,000 years worth of reading happens on our sites every single month, which I just want to say, again, as we're having these conversations about the doom and gloom in the world, that should give all of us a tremendous amount of hope for humanity because, look, we still want to learn. If all the services and solutions and sites that are out there, people want to learn. They want to know what's going on in their world. They are seekers of knowledge, and I think that that speaks really well of all of us. So congratulations, everyone. Good job, humans.
Well, especially to you. But what you also have to fight a lot of uphill battles, like Turkey, for example. Talk about what happened in Turkey and what you're doing there.
Sure. So 2.5 years ago, the Turkish government approached us and asked us to remove references in 2 different articles to information that they found objectionable. And we at the Wikimedia Foundation, we do not censor information. We'll take down illegal content, of course, copyright violations, things like that, although they're very, very few on our sites. But we do not censor information. And so we went to the Wikipedia community, the Turkish community, and we said, look, are these articles good? Do they need more citations? And they said, no, these articles are great. We're going to make them better. But this information is, in fact, accurate. And the Turkish government said, fine, we're going to take you down because we don't like this. And so we've been blocked in Turkey now for 2.5 years, and we've gone through the Turkish judicial process, but we're waiting to have our case heard.
Such as it is.
Well, yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the institutions in Turkey are under a lot of strain.
It's an institution that has been decimated.
This is not a
years.
Wikipedia problem. This is a Turkey problem.
Right.
Yeah, and so we are waiting to be heard in front of the Supreme Court, and we've also filed a petition in the European Court of Human Rights, which has fast-tracked us to hear our petition. So.
Have you had to do that kind of thing before, or is that a first?
We also have a lawsuit pending against the National Security Agency.
Well, let's hear about that.
A few years back, 2015, we launched a suit based on the upstream data collection practice that was revealed by Edward Snowden in the leaks of information about mass surveillance. And Wikipedia was one of the sites that was referenced in the document dump. And so working with the ACLU as our lead counsel and tremendous amount of pro bono support from other organizations like Cooley have been really great lawyers for us. We went to court over this. We had originally had 8 additional co-plaintiffs. All of them have been dropped from the case. We are still there, and we're fighting to establish. We established standing. The government is appealing. We are fighting to
Do you have this word dropped because of?
They couldn't demonstrate standing, but given the size and scale of what we do, it was a far, far easier case to make. We also saw, and I think that this really speaks to the chilling effect of things like we believe very strongly in the need for freedom of inquiry when it comes, freedom of inquiry as a prerequisite for freedom of information. You need to know that when you walk into a library, somebody is not standing behind you looking at everything you read. Librarians have fought very hard for this principle over the years. At Wikimedia, we completely agree with this, and when these revelations came out about mass surveillance, we saw something like a 20% drop in traffic to articles about issues, for example, such as terrorism. Now, there are so many legitimate reasons why one might be wanting to look up an article about Hezbollah, right? There's protests in Lebanon right now. I might be interested for that reason. So when we see things like this, we say, okay, that is an actual impingement on our ability to freely inquire. We believe that that is something that is not constitutional, and so we took them to court.
What is it you're trying to get, though? Just to tell you exactly how much they surveilled your users?
No, we'd like them to stop that practice.
Just to stop.
Well, we'd like to reestablish some precedent around what the expectations are around necessary and proportionate principles for surveillance. It's not that surveillance in and of itself doesn't have a necessary national security purpose in some instances. We're saying that dragnet surveillance is fundamentally unconstitutional, and we are one of the organizations that not only wants to be able to build a product that people use, but to advocate on behalf of the values that enable our work to be done. And so that is a broader sort of calling for us. And then as an institution, as an organization, we try to live that every single day.
Okay, one thing I notice, and maybe it's the nature of the Google searches I do, but it seems like every Google search I do, there's a Wikipedia answer or a Wikipedia feature
or if you talk
on the homepage of Google.
Or Alexa, or yeah.
Right, so how much does Google give you in exchange for them making money off of me that way?
Google.org donated, I think, about $2 million to us last year, and the Google employees are very generous with their matching gift program. But I think that, and I have argued elsewhere, last year in Wired UK, that the amount of support that we receive, and not just we as Wikimedia, but the commons, open source programming initiatives, all of this sort of stuff, core infrastructure that is essential to the success of these tech companies, we receive relatively little support relative to the value that we generate on their behalf. And so my fundamental belief is not just Wikipedia, but Creative Commons, a number of other institutions, the Software Freedom Conservancy, all of these sorts of places should be receiving additional support from those who have done incredibly well financially by virtue of the infrastructure that has been built that has enabled their success.
Well, it would seem that it makes them look good to support you too, and it's amazing that they don't do more, because relative to how many searches are enriched with your content,
Well,
2 million is nothing.
I also think, we have evidence, and you and I talked about this earlier, that when the commons is thriving, it actually not just is good for the existing business model, what it also does is it opens up more opportunity for more people. So the example you and I were talking about is the government of Wales maintains a Wikipedian in residence whose responsibility it is to ensure that the Welsh Wikipedia thrives. Now, Welsh is a very, Wales is a relatively affluent country, right? It's a high income, high human development standards, but the language itself is spoken by relatively few people, and it competes with English. And so what the government of Wales wanted to ensure was that Welsh thrives as a digital language as well, not just a spoken, but digital, because otherwise you start to see the degradation of the language in total. And so what they realized is by ensuring a Wikipedia exists in Welsh, it becomes a heuristic that other companies use to decide whether they build products and services in Welsh. So Wikipedia is an indicator of the health of the web in a language. Now, that's great for Wales, but Welsh people have lots of other access to services, again, in English and other languages. Now imagine if you are a speaker of a West African language like Igbo. Who's building for you? Wikipedia supports...
There's a lot more Igbo speakers than Welsh speakers.
Oh, a lot more, yeah, millions, right? So Wikipedia supports 300 languages. I think last I checked, Google supports about 150 actively. When we support a commons that thrives, and when the rest of the technology...
Facebook is like 140.
Yeah, it's a totally different case, though, because it's user-generated content, right? So, but when we support a commons that thrives on behalf of everyone, we support everyone in having access to the internet they want to have. Right now, the internet is primarily in English, yet that is not what the majority of the world speaks. All of these people, we talked about the next billion in voice services, are coming online to an internet that essentially has already the standards, the content, the expectations, the culture has been set for them. They are immigrating into a nation that may or may not want them, right? Which is kind of the history of how most of the world has always been treated.
So how are you going to build content in the 300th language? I mean, do you have like a specific set of programs that you apply or that you offer to those speakers in order to sort of jumpstart the process?
Absolutely. Well, we work with them, right? So we just had our annual Wiki Indaba, which is our gathering of our African languages. We had our Wiki Arabia, which is for Arabic speakers. We work with our global community as partners to try to understand what their needs are, and then work with them to design for what those resources and solutions are that are going to make them successful. And so, in this case, this is one of those places where I look out and I say, the reason we've been successful is we do this together. If that's something you're interested in, or anyone in this audience has a connection to, let's have that conversation, because we want to be working collaboratively. I know there's friends here from the Internet Archive. That's a great example of a partnership where we are actually trying to build the infrastructure to support knowledge for the world. And it's not about us, and it's not about them. It's about what we do together.
I think we should go to audience and see if anybody has questions or comments about, I know I always do this with no warning, so people aren't prepared. But okay, nobody's hand. That's too bad. Oh no, there's somebody. Okay, go ahead. A good question asker.
You have had great questions. I'm excited.
Good afternoon. My name is Catherine Harrison from the Deep Trust Alliance. I'm really interested in how Wikipedia thinks about source verification and attribution. Obviously, it's important that the information on Wikipedia and all of your various properties is based in the real world. How are you guys thinking about that? Who do you partner, and where do you see opportunity for solutions in that space?
Yeah, thanks. It's a great question. So Wikipedia has 3 core policies around verifiability, neutrality, and no original research. What that means is that all sources have to be cited. The first one means that all sources have to be cited back to a reliable source. And how that is defined, Wikipedia has, editors have determined that that is about the quality of the source and its approach to editorial policy and or fact checking, because obviously the sources you need for 16th century Islamic art are very different than the sources you need for current affairs, and that varies tremendously across languages and the like. What we think about, we're very interested in right now, is how do we support the community in having these conversations around quality of sourcing. For example, Breitbart and the Daily Mail are both not considered to be reliable sources on Wikipedia, so there is a degree of enforcement that yeah, but on Facebook, I think
Facebook
Breitbart
thinks
is.
Breitbart's perfectly fine.
I know. So again, the things people can learn from Wikipedia, right? So we've had this conversation, guys. Like, I don't know why we have to keep reinventing this conversation. Oh, I do, business models and political pressure. So the way that we approach this is like, how do you evaluate the quality and reliability of the source? And what we're working on right now is actually creating something that we think of as a structured citation graph that can allow us greater insight into what the distribution is around where sourcing is coming from for different articles, allowing editors a greater ability to be able to say where are there unsupported assertions in articles, the ability to go back and look for things like, errant Breitbart links that shouldn't be there in order to remove them. And I think that one of the things that we're also looking at is within the broader ecosystem, and Dana Boyd's done a bunch of really great research with this at Data and Society, is what is the role of citation links? I'm hearing snaps, yeah, totally. What are the role of citation links in the process of establishing trust relative to other sources on the web, and this whole idea of sort of like SEO laundering, and how can we make sure that's not happening on our sites? Because again, we think of ourselves as part of an ecosystem of trust and credibility, and we want to make sure that we're playing our role as a good actor in that space.
Oh, okay. Mike's right there. Okay.
John Corgan, I run a company called Summit Sync. You're an NDI alum, which I love NDI, great organization. How do you think about the democratization of information relative to China, right? So who has an army of people that they can throw at you to almost overcome with just brute force some of the things that you just talked about. So how do you think about that? So
we're blocked in China and have been blocked in China across all languages since this past April. We've been intermittently blocked in the past. We use SSL, so you either block all of us or none of us. There's no sort of pinpoint blocking. With China, people still edit Wikipedia from China. Pro-regime or pro-government people, anti-government people. We also have editors from Taiwan, Hong Kong.
You mean using VPNs they do that now?
Yeah, that's right. Hong Kong, Taiwan, the diaspora. And on Wikipedia, those tensions tend to work very well in terms of creating a healthy discourse. I worry less about languages and where you have a geographic and political distribution than I worry about small languages that can be subject to capture. Now, that's imperfect, right? I recognize that in China, as you said, the numbers are so significant as to potentially be overwhelming. But one of the things that makes Wikipedia really different in this instance is that it's harder to brute force attack an individual article because of the system of trust that accrues within Wikipedia editors means that people with the highest degrees of sort of trust and credibility can lock an entire article or in theory lock an entire Wikipedia to prevent it from being edited should that need to be the case if it were to come under a sort of wide scale attack. What we're looking at is how can we improve within the foundation, how can we give editors additional tools to not just respond to immediate sort of DDoS style attacks on our content, but how can we look at sort of the longer term, more insidious efforts to actually shift the nature of content over an extended period, which is a harder problem to solve, but it's something that is a broader social question that I think we're all looking at. It's that Overton window question.
It is kind of amazing. You don't actually oversee the content, particularly. You leave that to the editors.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's right.
You really you just have systems you put in place to make sure that they are legitimate and they are governed properly, but you don't put your hands on the content at all.
No, we have a clear editorial line that editorial policy is set by the community. We can raise issues, we can draw things to people's attention, but this is really something that the community runs, and we trust them to do that.
Is there anything there that you've learned that applies directly to some of these other less well-governed companies we've been talking about here?
I mean, I agree with everything that anyone said so far on like the business model problem, right? Tristan's image of the guy off stage, sort of holding the business model as a gun to the head. It was very evocative. But I think that some of the things that you can learn are, we have accountability embedded into our product. So you can see every single edit to every article on Wikipedia back to essentially when Wikipedia was created. We lost a few, we lost some stuff in the early dumps because we were pretty unstable when we first got started. But you can see almost every edit. You can actually get into the software. It's every piece of code that we write is open source. And while most people don't do that, and they don't go to the talk page, and they don't go to the edit history, there is an assumption that they could. And that is a powerful tool for accountability to us, a powerful tool for our editors, and it's a powerful tool for the public to be able to hold us to account. We often find out when things are going wrong from intrepid journalists and researchers. So when I said at the beginning, how do we do it? We do it together. And I think that one of these things that tech companies could think a lot more creatively about is how to trust their users more. And actually that gets me to another point. I really hate the term users, because users are the thing that we focus on when we focus on the product that we already have. And so much of the conversation we've had today and over the course of yesterday as well is about the impact that we're having on society as a whole. If we're only focusing on the people who are on the product that we have, we're not focusing on the product's interactions with society. We should be talking about people, because that's what all of us are, and restoring that humanity and that power to the individual. And that goes along all the way on up the chain to human-oriented governance, to the democratic institutions that should be regulating the entire sector. We should be restoring power and recognizing that these are tools that people use, not users.
Boy, that's so in keeping with other things we've heard. Well, thank you so much. Thank you. Really good.
Thank you. Thanks.